Among the figures who shaped the ancient world, none left a mark as haunting as Pontius Pilate, a man remembered not for glory, but for a single decision. His name is spoken in the Nicene Creed recited by billions of Christians every year, forever binding him to the trial of Jesus of Nazareth. Appointed prefect of Judea in 26 AD, Pilate's mandate from Emperor Tiberius was simple.
Maintain the peace. Honor the imperium.
But Judea was no ordinary province. It seethed with apocalyptic expectation, messianic uprisings, and a readiness to die for the law of God. Rome crushed every revolt without mercy, yet the embers of rebellion always persisted. Into this furnace Pilate stepped, and in the clash between Caesar's empire and Jewish hopes for deliverance, he faced the unique decision that would define him and the world. At the height of religious fervor in Judea, Pilate presided over the trial and execution of Jesus, a moment that eclipsed every other act of his career. This is the background story of what happened that day, with more to the story than it may seem. When a Roman governor found himself shockingly caught between two kingdoms, his conscience was pressed with ultimatums both political and eternal. There was something different about this man this time. He was unafraid. Here, Pilate's encounter with the King of the Jews made him the most infamous Roman to ever live, left with one question to ask.
Truth. What is truth?
He was crucified for us under Pontius Pilate, and suffered and was buried.
The New Testament portrays Pilate as diplomatic and reasonable, but contemporary historians depict Pilate as rather ruthless and uncompromising, quick to wield the sword, and dismissive of Jewish religious sensitivities. Both portrayals do reflect different facets of Pilate's character at different times over his decade-long governorship, and uniting the narratives reveals the complexity behind what really happened at the trial of Jesus. With the trial in mind, let's explore the evolution of Pilate's character from the beginning. What little we do know about Pilate's young life is hinted at by his family name, Pontius. The most notable contemporary Roman bearing this gens was a man named Lucius Pontius Aquila, an elected representative of the plebeians, Rome's class of common people. Pontius Aquila held this position around 45 BC and is sometimes linked to the conspiracy to assassinate Julius Caesar the following year. As the elected tribune of the plebs, Pontius Aquila was chosen by and for the common class, being himself a member of the plebeians. This suggests that the Pontii clan that Pilate hails from historically belonged to the lower class rather than to the aristocracy. Thus, Pilate likely came from humble beginnings. But in order for Pilate to have been the prefect of Judea some 70 years later, he could not have been a lower-class member like his ancestors. Prefects must belong to the equestrian class, a nobler rank oft associated with military reputation. This also suggests that Pontius Pilate may have excelled as a soldier in his younger years. Perhaps his military merit earned equestrian recognition and wealth. While that bit is speculative, the appointment of a prefect was not. This was a position handpicked by the emperor himself. In this case, we can be nearly confident that the Emperor Tiberius would have known and trusted Pontius Pilate to be a hardened, capable military leader, qualified to maintain one of his most difficult provinces. As the prefect of Judea, Pilate controlled at least a cohort of soldiers, roughly 500 men for the sake of deterring or suppressing threats. One such threat is implied in Luke chapter 13, where Pilate appears to have cut down Galilean rebels during a sacrificial offering. Prefects normally took up residence in Caesarea Maritima, the coastal administrative center of Judea, but would often relocate to Jerusalem, the religious center, to maintain Roman presence during important festivals. And according to contemporary historians who wrote of Pilate's administration, his presence in Jerusalem was often problematic and even violent, setting the stage for growing tensions. According to the Jewish philosopher and historian Philo of Alexandria, Pilate intentionally sought to disturb Jewish customs and to assert an early dominance. Philo describes how Pilate brought gilded shields into Jerusalem and had them installed in Herod's palace, each bearing a dedication to Tiberius. Now, this honor carried significant religious connotations, as the shields were usually ritual objects linked to worship in the imperial cult system. In this religious system, emperors were often venerated as the Divi Filius, the Son of God. Tiberius was no exception to this worship. The presence of these dedicated shields in Jerusalem were seen as an idolatrous intrusion into sacred space. Even members of the Herodian dynasty formally petitioned Pilate to have these shields removed, but Pilate refused them, doubling down on their presence. In response to this, the Jewish leaders threatened a public revolt over the blatant disrespect to their laws and sent an envoy to Tiberius. Philo says that when Tiberius received the complaints from Judea, he was outraged that Pilate used his name to provoke a religious population to this extent. He ordered Pilate to remove the shields from Jerusalem immediately and have them relocated to Caesarea Maritima, which housed the temple dedicated to Emperor Augustus, a proper place, all things considered, for cultic observation. Pilate complied, but he wouldn't stand to be subdued by the Judeans again. A second incident follows this one, recorded by the Jewish Roman historian Josephus, who wrote later in the 1st century. As tensions between Roman and Jewish authorities were building, Pilate quietly ordered Roman standards to be brought into Jerusalem, military banners which adorned the images of Tiberius and other imperial symbols. This invited greater outrage from the Jews over the presence of graven images in the Holy City. Though Pilate anticipated resistance, it's speculated that his perceived weakness over the previous issue damaged his reputation, and so he sought to reaffirm dominance. A large delegation of Jews marched to Caesarea, where Pilate was residing at the time, and protested outside of his headquarters for days, pleading for the removal of all the standards. Now, Pilate refused again, but to get ahead of the public hysteria, he summoned all of these protesters into an open stadium and surrounded them with his armed soldiers, threatening violence if they did not abandon their petition. But instead of capitulating to Pilate's intimidation, the Jews saw through Pilate's bluff and bared their necks to the swords, declaring that they would rather die than to see their holy law desecrated. Pilate was shocked by their collective willingness to martyrdom, and so he relented once more, fearing that a massacre of this magnitude would destroy his reputation with Tiberius. The standards were ordered out of Jerusalem, and as Pilate gave a second concession, his governing style seemed to change from that of brute intimidation to a cunning diplomacy, evolving him over time into the later administrator that we see in the Gospels. With these civil controversies serving as some background context, everything came to a climactic head during a particular Passover in Pilate's administration, an event described in each of the 4 Gospels. The Passover was the most important Jewish festival of the year, and it welcomed innumerable pilgrims to Jerusalem, necessitating a Roman presence to keep the peace. Stationed with his cohort in the Praetorium, which was likely Herod's palace near the temple, Pilate had oversight at the very heart of Jewish culture, where destiny would soon knock on his doors. According to the Gospels, the Jewish authorities had arrested and questioned one Jesus of Nazareth on charges of blasphemy, saying that he alone claimed the title King of the Jews, and even threatened to destroy the temple. The charges were more religious in nature, but did carry some political weight, as any claim to unsanctioned kingship threatened Roman authority. As the Jewish Sanhedrin lacked powers to execute, they were forced to defer Jesus to the domain of Pilate. It is now early morning on Friday.
What charges are you bringing against this man?
If he were not a criminal, we would not have brought him before you.
Pilate has been through all of this before and heard the same things. He understands the religious nuances, though he despises them under his breath. Today of all days, he has no time for this.
Take him yourselves. Judge him according to your own law.
but we are not permitted to put anyone to death."
With growing impatience, Pilate enters the praetorium, fuming that the most important week of the year has already started with a religious feud. He turns and summons the accused man to stand before him. He looks intently.
Well, are you the king of the Jews?
Is this your own thought? Or have others told you this about me?
Am I a Jew? Your own people and priests handed you over to me. What have you done?
My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, then my servants would be fighting even now. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this realm.
So, you are a king?
So you say. For this purpose I was born and have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. And everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice.
Truth. What is truth?
Before Jesus can respond, Pilate has made a judgment. The man brought before him is clearly harmless, yet he can't simply dismiss him. The peace must be maintained this weekend, so Pilate comes up with an offer that should settle the matter quickly. Drawing on tradition, Pilate takes the diplomatic route.
I find no guilt in this man, but you have a custom that I should release one man for you at Passover. So shall I release for you Barabbas, or shall I release to you your king of the Jews?
Not this man, but Barabbas!
Pilate was utterly shocked at the contention of the crowd. Who was this man to be so despised?
Then what shall I do with your king of the Jews?
Crucify him!
Why? What evil has this man done?
The crowds were beyond reasoning. A riot was starting. Who was this man? The worst-case scenario in Jerusalem was happening, and soon enough someone was going to get killed. This man simply cannot go free. Pilate had one diplomatic tool left. To save Jesus' life, Pilate ordered him to be scourged. This should satisfy the wrath of the Jewish authorities by bringing Jesus within inches of his life. After scourging him, the Romans give Jesus the crown of thorns and a purple robe, mocking the claim to kingship and demonstrating the brutality of Roman discipline. This should be the end of the matter. Pilate represents a wounded Jesus to the crowds.
Behold the man.
But the crowds are still not satisfied. Demands for crucifixion only intensify.
Enough! Take him yourselves and crucify him. I've found no guilt deserving of death.
No, he must die. By our own law, he is guilty, because he made himself out to be the Son of God.
Now this is the statement which unnerves Pilate the most. The title of Son of God belonged to his own master, Tiberius. The emperor was worshipped as a living manifestation of deity, but he wasn't the only deity. Countless tales existed in Greco-Roman myth which told of the gods coming to earth in human form, testing the patience and piety of humans. Seeing how Jesus was so different from the common criminal Pilate was accustomed to, this idea was not off the table. This Jesus may be a divinity walking the earth, testing the will of the people. He quickly ushers Jesus back into the praetorium.
Where are you from?
But Jesus does not answer.
You won't speak to me. Don't you know that I have authority to release you, to excuse you, to crucify you?
You would have no power over me unless it were granted to you from above. For this reason, the one who delivered me up to you has the greater sin.
This was enough for Pilate. A normal man would plead for his life, give up the act. Something beyond the power of the Imperium was unfolding. Pilate had gone from superstitious to terrified. He rushes back outside, and under his breath he orders Jesus released immediately. But the crowds want more, and one of the chief priests puts Pilate in the ultimate checkmate.
If you release this man, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who makes himself out to be a king opposes Caesar."
Pilate's heart sinks as he hears these words. Make no mistake, this is a cunning threat with massive political implication. The term friend of Caesar carried an exceptionally charged undertone in the Roman Empire, specifically during Pilate's tenure. Just 2 years earlier, in 31 AD, the Emperor Tiberius had ordered the execution of his once trusted advisor, Lucius Aelius Sejanus, in a move that utterly shocked the empire. Sejanus was a rags-to-riches commander of the Praetorian Guard and loved by the emperor as a son. Sejanus had risen to immense power in a few short years with some clever tactics and even smarter backstabbings, and personally earned the title Friend of Caesar from the emperor. Tiberius had even once considered Sejanus as a potential regent ruler so that he could retire in peace. But when a deep-rooted conspiracy to seize the throne was uncovered, Tiberius had Sejanus arrested and executed, triggering a wave of brutal purges through Rome. As it turns out, Sejanus, as the friend of Caesar, had carefully orchestrated the deaths of all of his political rivals, including members of Tiberius' own family. Cassius Dio writes that when Tiberius discovered the long-stirring plot, he was so grief-stricken and worn out by the affair that he wished to die. The betrayal from a friend of Caesar devastated Tiberius and led to a reign of suspicion, paranoia, and violence. He put Sejanus to death and executed many others he suspected of conspiracy, without listening to their defense. When all of this news had reached Judea, the term friend of Caesar became a tool of manipulation, and the Jewish authorities wielded it as a threat to Pilate. No true friend of Caesar would allow another king to go free, much less live. Their thinly veiled insinuation was simple. If Pilate lets Jesus of Nazareth go alive, it would echo the betrayal of Sejanus. When the paranoid emperor hears of this, he will have Pilate stripped of his position, his life, or worse. There was no more room for negotiation. With his mind torn over who Jesus truly was, a life-ending threat from the crowd, and inevitable retribution from the emperor, Pilate had to make the ultimate decision: Jesus or Caesar.
Crucify him now.
The rest, truly, is history. Pilate's legacy is inseparable from his role in the crucifixion. The creeds that echo through churches across the world remember the unfoldings of that day, which narrated the centerfold of history. A sacrifice mixed with politics, rage, and blood.